All right, so this is the inaugural episode of the Inking Out Loud podcast.
I like the way you put that. That makes me feel really good.
Oh,
Go
yeah,
on, go on.
I am Drew McCaffrey. I'm one of the co-hosts.
I'm Rob Santos. I'm a longtime friend of Drew's for what, like 9-10 years now, something like that?
Yeah.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time.
Amazingly already.
And Jarrod Livingston. Yeah. I've known Drew since first grade.
Yeah, so Jared's our special guest for the first book.
Exactly.
He'll probably be a recurring guest.
Sure.
Yeah, that sounds good. I've heard lots about you, Jarrod. Sounds like you're some good people.
I'm sure it's all
What
awesome.
are we talking about today? We're talking about Elantris.
We are talking about Elantris.
Aren't we?
We're talking about the very
kicking
first...
it off with Brandon Sanderson. I like it.
Yeah. And so Rob and I have both read Elantris before, although it has been some time for me. I read it first back in like 2007, and then I read it again maybe like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. I didn't read it until like 2010, probably like that. My first experience with Sanderson was his Mistborn trilogy. After I heard that he was completing the Wheel of Time, I was like, Brandon Sanderson, who is this guy? I'm going to check his stuff out, right? It wasn't until after Mistborn that I read the entire trilogy, that I read Elantris. It's probably the Cosmere book, as far as his entire universe goes, that I've read the least.
Elantris?
But I've still read it probably through, over these past, I don't know, 8 years now. I've probably read it through 5-6 times. I've listened to it on audiobook a couple more times. But it's been just like Drew. For me, it's been, I think, about 3 years since I read that book last. So I'm going to be a little hazy on all the details. Jarrod, I very much apologize if I accidentally spoil something for you. There's a good chance that that's going to happen today.
I'm mentally prepared for that.
But you've made it through, from what I understand, the first half?
I'm through part one.
Part one.
Okay, so that's chapter 27 if I...
Yep.
Okay, good. Because I at least looked it up last night, yeah.
So obviously, what we're going to be discussing today, there will be spoilers for part 1 of Elantris.
Yes, there will be.
There may be some small spoilers that come in regarding the rest of the Cosmere. Probably not like plot points, but just sort of world building things, realmatics, and how Brandon Sanderson's dwarf galaxy here works.
So we're not like holding back. I can bring forth my knowledge, my Cosmere knowledge, without worrying about spoiling.
How much of the Cosmere have you read, Jarrod? Is it like... It hasn't just been Elantris,
a lot of it.
A lot of it.
So Stormlight and Mistborn and Warbreaker.
You've read everything else, right? You've done White Sand. You've done the prose.
Done White Sand.
See, I haven't done White Sand. That's the one I still have to get to. I've only finished like the first, I want to say 5 chapters of that book about 10 times. I haven't gotten into it. I haven't had a chance to sit down because I have that one on my phone. So I've been trying to read that one, but it's hard on a little screen. I've been through the beginning of that book at least a half dozen times, but you've got me beat there. I
think the only I think this Elantris and then Emperor's Soul in Arcanum I have not read.
Okay.
So
Arcanum. Okay. And Emperor's Soul?
Correct.
Okay, so
I
that's
have not
keep
read
in
that
mind,
either.
because we have like Emperor's Soul takes place on Cell, which is the same planet upon which the entire events of Elantris take place. So while I was doing my reread, at least the first 10 chapters, I wrote down a lot of thoughts. Is there anything in particular you want to get out first, as far as the book in question?
Yeah, I kind of want to touch on the fact that this is Brandon Sanderson's first published book.
Yeah,
and
it reads like it. It definitely reads like it.
It does. There's some things, it's pretty common criticism that people say this book isn't paced very well. The Sanderson Avalanche.
The Sanderson Avalanche. Yeah, I was waiting to get to that.
Is a little awkward in this one, where the kind of the pacing arc is very flat and slowly ramps up, and then it just absolutely goes bonkers in the last 120 pages or so.
Very typical of his style, but definitely pronounced in this book, in his first book.
It's very politically focused, from what I have gathered thus far.
Yeah.
So, and again, like pretty much every Sanderson book, religion is a big deal in it.
Right.
How religions interact with cultures, and how religion changes people, and how people interact with foreign religions and things like that. And I actually think this book is his best in that regard, because it's the one where religion is closest to his characters, especially
I
Rathan.
can accept that. Yeah.
I love Hrathen. I think he is one of his best characters.
I was waiting to bring up him because that guy has got to be one of my favorite characters in epic fantasy, just solely on the fact that he is just such a badass, isn't he? He's just such a badass. He doesn't give a shit. Pardon my French. We can censor that out later. But his whole, like, you can really see, like, his dedication to his cause, and of course, hit the conscience that weighs upon him and stuff like that. His just his whole, how else would you put it? His whole, I don't want to say silhouette, his whole demeanor, his whole atmosphere. He's a very, very confident guy. And I've been listening to the audiobook again just to brush up a little bit. And Jack Garrett, who narrates the audiobook, does a really good job with Hrathen. He does a very deep kind of forceful, commanding voice for him. And it's really, really, really something to listen to.
So on that note of like kind of Hrathen's personality and forceful demeanor,
yeah,
I thought it was really interesting. I highlighted one line. It's on page 364 of my.
Let's see if it's the same line that I wrote down. I bet you it might be.
And so it's after he runs into the beggar.
Yep.
Outside the walls of Elantris, and he gives him money, and then he gives him another bag of coins for the rest of the beggars, and the guy says, "Thank you, good sir," and Hrathen replies, "Thank Jadeth." And he says, "Who is Jadeth, good sir?" And Hrathen bowed his head. "You'll know soon enough, old man. One way or another, you'll know." And
that's so foreboding. I love it.
Well, but the interesting thing is, in the context of this, the tone that he uses there is so sad and regretful, because this is where he's realizing, I've made a mistake here, and the things that I've put in motion are gonna end horribly. Whereas if he had said that in chapter 5 instead of in chapter 25, it would have been foreboding and brooding and strong and evil. True. But in this sense, he feels more like a broken man.
You could feel the pity a little bit.
And that's like, the pacing for the plot is a little awkward in this, but as I'm reading through this time, I'm realizing the pacing is actually done really well with the character development. Yeah. There's a smooth arc, and it is actually pretty quick how these changes affect, and not just with Hrathen, but with Seirini and Raoden too.
Yeah.
While they're not doing much, Raoden more so than the others, but they are changing quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a how do I want to put this? An impending dynamic, I suppose. I want to just draw aside real quickly and say that we are going to be pronouncing a lot of these names very differently to begin with.
Oh yeah,
it's the nature of epic fantasy, right? Like, I'm mostly myself going off the way the audiobook narrator is pronouncing it, but like the first 5 or 6 read-throughs I did just by reading. It wasn't until the last couple times that I was listening to the audiobook. On the subject of Hrathen, though, there's a line that is a really good line that he had right near the beginning. It was right when Dilaf, who I want to have a whole conversation about by the way. There's a moment where Dilaf gets to read Wyrn's orders for Hrathen. And when he realizes what he's holding, Hrathen tells him, let's see if I can find it right here. Yes. "This isn't just a letter, it is scripture." And that one really stuck out to me too, because you get this feeling for just how much Hrathen really, really believes in what he's doing, and he really believes that he has some holy mandate to try and save these people. It's not just some sort of sadistic grab for power. He's actually, in his mind, in his own way, he's trying to do what he believes is save these people.
His only remaining direction in life is his servitude to Shu-Dereth.
Yeah,
and that becomes an issue for him as we get closer to the end of part 1, and where he starts realizing, I'm sort of moving solely on momentum. I don't really care about this anymore. I don't have faith or passion. I'm just holding on to this lifeline of servitude and order and, dare I say, dominion. In
nicely done. I see what you did there. Wow.
In his
Jarrod knows what he did.
Yeah. And so for those who may or may not be aware, in the Cosmere, Dominion is a shard of Adonalsium, and is one of the 2 shards who took up presence on Cell. They don't play a very large role in this book. The biggest sort of impact they have is in the 2 main religions, in Shu-Dereth and Shu-Korath, where Shu Dareth is all about dominion, and Shu Korath is all about devotion, which is the other shard.
Do we know that, like, specifically, or do we just suspect that, though?
No, we definitely know that. There are a couple of points where they talk about the theology.
Because Shu, not Shu Korath, Shu Keseg, talk about, I believe, was
so there's
the parent
Shu Keseg,
right?
which is the parent, and it's all about unity. And then there are the two splinter religions, and one is unity through love, and the other is unity through servitude.
Okay.
And so it's devotion and dominion.
Okay, so here's an interesting thought, and something I hadn't even thought to ask about before. We know for a fact that the planet existed before the arrival of devotion and dominion. Do we know roughly when, though, the religion Shu Keseg splintered into Shu Korath and Shu... oh my god, I'm drawing a blank on the last one. Shu Dareth? Yeah. Do you think Shu Korath could be an actual representation, not Shu Korath, sorry, Shu Keseg, the parent religion, could have been Adonalsium itself? Could that predate the shattering, do you think?
It wouldn't surprise me, honestly. It makes sense, though, the idea of unity,
Unity, that's what makes me think of it, unity. So if those two shards were still one, right? Because we know for a fact there was, there are religions still lingering in the Cosmere as a whole that worship Adonalsium as a whole, rather than the individual shards after they were splintered. Or shattered, I should say. In this case, that's a very fine distinction that we make there, right? When we're talking about Adonalsium, we're talking about shattering, and with the rest of the splinters, who, after that, get broken down more, we're talking about splintering, right?
Now,
that's a very fine distinction.
Are Scions splinters, then?
Scions are splintered.
Yeah, Scions are splinters, yeah.
But they were splintered, I believe, I'd have to double-check the words of Brandon on this one, but I believe Scions were splintered before Odium arrived and did his stuff.
Oh.
So one thing, actually, on that subject, I just want to get this out of the way.
Sure.
There's a common misconception among Cosmere fans that the chasm is... So we know that the chasm happened, there was this great earthquake, and that same night, Elantris lost, power.
Yeah, they fell from grace, yeah.
There's a common misconception among Cosmere fans that the chasm happened when Odium splintered devotion.
Right.
But if you think about how Aeon Door works and why the magic on Cell works the way it does, because Odium splintered devotion and dominion and stuffed all of that investiture, the power that made up those shards,
into the cognitive realm, yes?
Into the cognitive realm. And so because the cognitive realm has actual locations, the locations, the geographic areas of Cell are almost becoming sentient, and the magics are tied to those areas.
Yeah.
And we already know that Elantrians were using Aeon Door before the chasm, and Aeon Door was already tied to locations. Yeah. So the splintering of devotion and dominion was way, way, way before the chasm was made.
Oh yeah, the chasm was made 10 years before the start of the narrative.
Exactly. But there's a lot of misconceptions with that, where a lot of people I've seen online talking about it and assume that the chasm happened as a result. There's also that assumption with, we'll touch very lightly on this, but the Stormlight Archive with the Shattered Plains, there's sort of an assumption that happened with the splintering of another shard there, which we don't know.
We don't know. I mean, it could be involved with Tanavast's death. It could be, or death, I should say. Oh no, he's dead. Yes, Tanavast is dead. Yes.
Well, so I think we should avoid spoilers for Stormlight while we're discussing Elantris.
Okay. No. Good. Yeah. We were talking about Scions, and there was a thought that I had written down about Scions. When Kayine when he first recognizes Serene, at the very beginning of the book, she didn't know who he is at first, because he's lacking the beard, apparently, that he had back in his day. But one thing that she said to Aishi, her Scion, really, really stuck out to me. She asked him, "Do you recognize him?" And Aishi said, "He looks familiar." Then he apologizes and says, "My memory isn't what it used to be."
Yeah.
What do we think that Aishi means as a splinter of devotion by "my memory isn't what it used to be"? Because we know, for example, drawing back to Stormlight for a quick second, that Spring lose a lot of their mental faculties when they make the transition between different realms. We've seen the same thing with the Returned on Nalthis. So what do we think that could that mean anything? He says my memory isn't what it used to be.
So I feel like it has to be connected to the Riod.
Okay. Oh yeah, fair.
because he still is built around an Aeon, and it's incomplete. Well,
yeah.
We won't go all the way into that stuff for later books, but the Aeons don't work anymore. They don't fully work.
Yeah.
And that's a big mystery in this part of the book, is that Raoden kind of is realizing.
It's a good thing you said that, because I was about to continue with that exact line of thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Yeah.
Wait.
Jarrod has not finished the book yet. So
So good. So, and I was looking up to the point at which chapter 27 ended. I want to know, okay, where exactly does chapter 27 end? I looked up a chapter summary, and I was told, or at least I was told, I read that it ends. Actually, maybe I should just straight up ask Jarrod, what was the last thing that happened in chapter 27?
Ingested his own poison.
Good. Okay, I was going to say he ingested his own poison. All right. So everything that's happened up to there is we can definitely discuss at length.
So
and I'm going to crack open another one, by the way. Continue.
Plot points that are Serene is taking all of the nobles into Elantris and giving out food.
Yep, she's doing her... Is she still on her widow's trial at this point? Is this still what she's operating under? Okay.
And then Raoden is cleaning up Elantris. The last thing he did was taking a certain character who also appears in Oathbringer to Devotion.
Oh.
And
wait.
Giving him the sweet release.
Hold on. That has what to do with Stormlight? I didn't know that scene had anything to do with Stormlight. There's a link there?
So the guy that he put in?
Yeah?
Raiano, the fortune teller.
No freaking way. Are you serious? How do we know that? Was that a words of Brandon?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god!
We already knew, in Oathbringer, it's pretty clear that he's an Elantrian. He says,
we could tell he was an Elantrian. He says Merciful Domai. Yeah.
But yes. Yes.
Oh, you learn something new every day. I didn't know this. Oh my god, I just got really excited. Okay, cool. See, this is why we like discussing this kind of thing. These short discoveries afterwards, these short revelations that kind of just click, or someone tells you something later and you're like, oh my god, I didn't draw that connection before. That's exactly why everybody loves these books as much as they do.
Going in, it's helped me a little bit going into this with Cosmere knowledge, knowing, oh hey, this is a mysterious pool in the mountain. Let me guess what's going on here.
Yeah, I'll have to admit, the first 2 or 3 times I read the book, I had no idea what was going on during that scene.
Right,
I had zero clue. I wasn't even aware of the Cosmere at large until probably The Way of Kings in 2010.
Oh, wow.
That's when I started to realize, oh, wait, hold on, I'm getting a phone call here. Decline. That was a Toronto number. Weird. Anyway, yeah, it was about 2010, 2011, and then Alloy of Law came out shortly after that, and I was like, oh, okay, so... I mean, I had heard that it was connected, but he's actually making it obvious now. But yeah, I can just imagine reading that for the first time and knowing right away, oh, some sort of mysterious, glowing, bluish pool, I wonder what's going on there.
So in regards to that scene, I actually, another thing I highlighted, when they're going through the little temple, the clean temple, where there are no Aeons and everything's run by gears and doors and they have lanterns and stuff. There's a mural on the wall.
Oh, yeah. I think I wanted to talk about this too.
Is this the one where they're diving in?
Yeah, it says, an Elantrian stood facing the oval, his arms outstretched and his eyes closed. He appeared to be flying toward the blue disc. The rest of the wall was black, though there was a large white sphere on the other side of the oval. So obviously, the blue oval is Devotion Shard Pool. And we know now that it is a perpendicularity. This is how people transition between the realms and how they can world hop.
The white sphere.
But what the heck is the large white sphere on the other side of the oval? And I actually think, so there is a word of Brandon out there that there is something that nobody has figured out yet in Elantris that is a big deal for the Cosmere. What? And I wonder if this white sphere is that.
Okay.
Because the mural, everybody concentrates on the blue oval. It's obvious. It's the perpendicularity. It's the sharp.
Yeah.
But what is this white sphere on the other side?
See, I haven't heard this. I hadn't concentrated on this specific scene. I don't remember the white sphere coming into description at all. But immediately I had an idea. I mean, we know that the shard pool is a perpendicularity. It grants access to the cognitive realm at this point in the narrative, which is very dangerous in the cognitive realm with the door running wild. But couldn't that perhaps be the white kind of sun that's in the distance in the cognitive realm that everybody sees when they transition? Because there is a highway of clouds, if you will, that leads to a white sun.
That is in Roshar's.
Isn't that in all of the the cognitive realm, or are you sure that's just in Shadesmar?
I know it's definitely in Roshar's.
Oh, definitely.
I would have to reread Secret History. I don't recall if it was in Secret History or
That's
not.
a good point. I'm starting to doubt if I read it in anything else besides Shadesmar specifically. But okay, I was going to ask
something to do with the mechanics of world hopping, I guess.
Yeah, but that's the cool thing. It's like, what is it? What is that hint? You know?
Yeah. That could be something that Brandon, like 15 years ago, put when he put down, and he still hasn't explained it. Right?
Oh, for sure.
That's awesome. And I'm sure there's plenty more of those.
It makes me wonder if this is something that's going to come into play in the Elantris sequels, which he has talked about he needs to write before the back half of Stormlight and the Mistborn Era 3.
You see, I missed that specific bit of knowledge until just recently, so I was getting very, very frustrated with Brandon Sanderson lately. I was like, where is this goddamn Elantris sequel? Where is it going? Because you've put it off like 8 times in a row now. You could read State of the Sanderson from like 2011, 2012. I'm not sure if he was doing it quite that early, but it's like he says right in there, he's waiting for the right moment to do an Elantris sequel. And every time I finished the audiobook when I was welding, because I listen to audiobooks primarily when I'm working. That's the only way I can really read the books. I have time to read the books at all nowadays. But at the end of every single time, I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm going to go check and see if there's any news as to when he's going to be finally getting around to writing these sequels. Because I really want to know what's happening in Elantris 2 and Elantris 3. Yeah. I was actually about to list what we know about those two, but let's not do that until the second episode here, until we know exactly what's happened for the rest of the book.
I would like to enjoy finishing this.
Yeah. Let's finish. Let's contain. Yeah,
Can we talk about Raoden and what we think of him?
Yeah.
Raoden, good.
I don't like him.
You don't like Raoden?
Why not?
He's a little. Go ahead. Yeah.
I don't like Raoden or Serene. They both seem immature, and the main thing with Raoden is I have a hard time believing that he's capable of all these leadership qualities that he's showing and pulling these people together and like merging these rival gangs. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to jive with me.
I noticed an immediate parallel between him and a character who Brandon, I think, did a lot better with that kind of narrative, who was Kaladin Stormblessed. Right away, as soon as he's cast out as he's an outcast, right? He meets a whole bunch of other people who are also hopeless. He decides, I'm going to band these people together. I'm going to try to show in some sort of act of defiance that we aren't broken yet, that we can still, through just kind behavior and respect and honor, especially honor, we can just allow each other to thrive still. We're not broken yet. And that's something I think Brandon did a lot better when he had more experience. But you're absolutely right. I was having these same kinds of thoughts with Raoden. I'm like, he sounds like he's had a quite easy life up to this point. You know, he's very, very wealthy
father.
Kind
of like, I would describe it as flat.
Yeah. And that's, again, to be expected with...
Kind of like someone you meet acting totally out of character.
Yeah. So he doesn't feel genuine? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Interesting, because we see a lot of, we read a lot from inside his head, and we can see that he's genuine. I never really got like a disingenuine kind of feel from him, but definitely there's, like you said, like a kind of one-dimensional, too good with no possible really negative character drawbacks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what's his like...
He doesn't really have any big flaws.
He doesn't have exactly. I'm still working to find a flaw, and I can't.
I have a hard time understanding where Brandon's going with his character development, as in, I mean, what the end goal is.
Sorry, what was that last one?
I have a hard time believing where Brandon's going with his character development and what his end goal would be for Raoden.
Yeah.
Where, like Serene's make a lot more sense to me, and and her motivations make a lot more sense. Raoden's... He's just kind of floating. I don't know.
So
especially considering he's not aware of what's going on outside the city walls, right?
Another thing that I highlighted, it was the scene where Hrathen has his sort of crisis of faith, and he pulls out the journal that he never uses.
Yeah.
And he says, I have found purpose, the book read. Before I lived, but I didn't know why. I have direction now. It gives glory to all that I do. I serve in Lord Jadeth's empire, and my service is linked directly to him. I am important. And I wrote a note on this, and I said specifically the words, I am important. And I think at the core, importance is a defining factor for all three of the characters. Serene is an outsider. She was an outsider originally in Teod. You know, she was the princess, but you know, she was awkward. She wasn't desired. She wasn't respected. All of this
she's super
stuff.
tall, right?
And
That's
so she's
major source of
insecure.
her. Yeah,
but she's competent and she's thirsty to prove that she's important.
Yeah.
And then Raoden, he is important by default as the prince, but doesn't feel like he needs to be important.
Interesting.
He denies his importance.
I actually highlighted a line from Raoden where he comes out and says this exactly. Or he's talking to Galadin, and Galadin says, "The newcomer soul, you made them all think they are of vital importance, just like Marish. Shoes are nice, but not a matter of life and death." And then Raoden says, "People do a better job when they assume they're important."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And self-importance
I didn't see
is an important thing in this, you know, and then Hrathen, of course, he does see himself as important. He knows he's important, but he finds himself losing his importance as Diloth takes over the chapel.
Terrifies him.
So self-importance is a defining factor for all three of these characters, and where Raoden's struggle is, and where his change as a character, is him accepting his importance.
Yeah.
So Serene is seeking importance, Raoden is denying importance, and Hrathen is losing importance.
Damn.
And these are the defining character conflicts for the three main.
Nicely caught. I didn't even begin to catch that one. I see exactly where you're going with that, though. That's a good point. Since we're on the subject now of Dilaf, or we just were a second ago, let's talk about this guy. Because right off the bat, he was like, there's something you feel a little off with him, right?
Crazy.
Right? That's fair to say. There's something not quite right with that one.
He feels...
And something... Go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, it feels almost possessed at times.
Yeah, he's got a very kind of bipolar, if that's what you want to call it, personality, doesn't
he?
Just
manic. Not even manic, bipolar, just manic.
Yeah, manic, yeah. Well, he's fervent. He's almost like rabid, drooling at the mouth over the thought of what he's
zealot.
Yeah, he's a true zealot, right? And as Rathan says, there's a lot to be respected about, zealotry in a way, but it can really run away with you, right? Mm-hmm. Makes you wonder if he had some sort of problem in his past with that. But specifically about Dilaf that I wanted to talk about, oh, you know what? No, I don't want to say that because once again, that's an end of the book kind of thing. So let's not go there. All right, no, let's scrap that. But I still want to get like what you're feeling about Dilaf because he's a character that I don't personally like very much. I don't think a lot of people would like him to be honest. But I mean, narratively speaking, even as just a narrative object and what his use in the book is, I don't. That's about it. That's all I have to say about Dilaf is until at least we finish the book, and then I get to say exactly what I think. But
the main problem I have with that whole thing is I have very little sympathy for Rathan because he's the one who empowered him in the first place.
Yeah,
it's like you set this up. I mean,
so
what did you think was going to happen?
So I see where you're coming from, and I partially agree with you there, but
he's a loose cannon.
Agree because it. As we reach the end of part 1, it becomes very clear that Dilaf manipulated Rathan this whole time.
Yeah.
He did the same thing to Rathan that Serene did to Iadon.
Yeah.
He
kind
came
of
off
led you
purposely
along.
As one-dimensional.
So is he really quite shrewd?
Inconsequential. Well, he obviously is. There's the scene where Rathan's like, all right, I'm going to send you back to Fjorden to get you out of my hair. And then he realizes he's been completely outmaneuvered because Dilaf has made every important person in the chapel an Odiv.
Okay, so we've gotten to that. That was my next question for Jarrod. I was going to ask exactly where he is regarding Dilaf because I didn't read up to that point.
Yeah.
But we've gotten to the point where Dilaf, you start to sense his kind of subtle, I don't know what you want to call it. He's like his influencing and his personal circle is widening and stuff like that. You're just starting to get hints of it. He is absolutely a manipulator. You're right.
So and like at first when you start seeing him like, oh, he jumps into the sermon without permission or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh well, Rathan, this is his fault for setting him up and like giving him that like. Just going along with it after the first time, and then it's like he's going to burn the Elantrian, and you're like, oh, well, of course this was going to happen. You enabled him. But then as it goes on, you realize, wait a second, like, maybe officially he enabled him, but Diloff set everything up. Diloff is playing freaking chess.
And you start to take him more seriously, don't you, Diloff?
And Rathan doesn't even realize he's sitting at the game board. Like,
yeah, that's a good one. I like that.
Like Rathan is so, like, not that he's like a bad chess player, so to speak, but he's so focused on dealing with the nobles and Seirini that he doesn't even realize that there's this whole bigger game happening.
And that really shows just how manipulative and clever Diloff is, because he knows exactly what his target is going to focus on, and he lets him focus on that. He works Rathan's whole perspective around his end goal. And that's really why Diloff is... I mean, I might take back what I said a few minutes ago. Diloff is a really good narrative device.
Yeah, he's a good narrative device.
I take that back, because not being able to spoil anything near the end... you can see why he is who he is, and that's what I really like about a lot. Not just Diloff, but all of Brandon Sanderson's characters. Well, with certain exceptions, there's certain characters who I will just never ever like. Should we list a few of them just to piss people off?
Do we want to alienate our audience in the first episode?
Yeah, no. Let's hold off on hating on the Lopin for now. Let's wait until later.
We'll hold the hate until we get to Stormlight and Era 2.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point. I agree. So what else are we gonna talk about now?
So I mean,
Elantris. Go on.
So I was just gonna say. So this is basically half of what leads to Rathan's, I guess you would call it, depression at the end of part 1.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I don't want to get too speculative and have you guys ruin things for me, but...
So please speculate.
So one of the things I really want to do before we end this episode, at some point, is like get your predictions for the second half of this book.
That's awesome. I didn't consider that. We should definitely do that.
But before we get to Jared's predictions, like I wanted to just bring up kind of a general thing, like how do we feel about the writing in this book?
Okay.
So Rob and I are both writers. Jared has dabbled a bit himself.
Occasionally, yeah. Drew more so than myself, but I dabble a little bit.
And this is Brandon's first book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's his first published book.
Well, yeah, it's first published.
Just to be that guy.
Seventh book or
yeah, it's sixth. If I can just hear a whole bunch of really hardcore fans that might happen to stumble upon this someday going, no, it's
even
sixth.
then, this was his first book that
first published book.
He got like real editorial feedback.
Yeah. Was this where he met Moshe Feder, or was that after?
Yeah. Moshe. He signed Brandon, I believe, on the strength of White Sand, but they decided that it needed a lot of work, and Brandon was like, "Well, I have Elantris as well." I would have to double check, but I'm pretty sure he queried multiple books.
Right.
And Dragonsteel was the other one.
Yeah.
And
didn't he write Aether of Night before this too? But that was just cannibalized.
Aether of Night came after. Aether of Night was
written after.
Yeah.
Really, that was written after Mistborn? Because I'm pretty sure.
No, not after Mistborn, but after.
Oh, Mistborn was directly after Elantris, though.
So Aether of Night was when he was really solidifying the Cosmere as a unifying idea.
Okay.
There's a cool introduction if you go on 17shard.com and make an account. You can go to the Aether of Night discussion board. And there's a thread where you can request the unedited, I think it's the third draft manuscript of Aether of Night. And it comes with an introduction from Brandon where he talks about where it fell into his, Anyway, back to Elantris.
17th Shard, yeah. Go on.
Yeah. So, it's his first published work. It's very clear to me, between now, Elantris now, and 10 years later when Oathbringer comes out, Brandon has progressed greatly as a writer.
Oh yeah,
it's a clear difference.
not even just with characters and plot structure and especially pacing, but with line by line prose.
Yeah,
there are several things in this book that stand out to me that really bug the inner writer.
So you mean to say things that current Brandon Sanderson wouldn't write at his
not so
level
much
of proficiency, if you will.
There's a big one that keeps popping up where
I think I know where this is going. Can I guess?
Go for it.
Are you going to talk about Maladroit?
No, I was going to bring up Maladroit just kind of as a joke. Amusingly, Maladroit does show up a couple of times in the Ether of Night manuscript too.
Does it too?
Maladroit?
Maladroit, yeah.
Maladroit.
Like awkwardly.
It means clumsily, gaining your balance again,
he
stuff
used
like that, or awkwardly doing.
11 times in the first Mistborn book?
I never counted. I honestly didn't even notice his use of Maladroit that many times until probably I want to say the Hero of Ages. And I was like, wait a sec. Some of these words are being repeated again and again.
It was really bad in the Final Empire, and then he scaled it back a little in Well of Ascension, and people.
Well, it would be worse because Vin is still learning, right?
Yeah. At that point, it had become a thing, and he won't use it anymore. I guarantee he's never going to use that word in another book. But I have found one use of Maladroit in Elantris. I
found one so far too, and I made a note for it right away. Anyway, go on. You were going to say something before that.
Yeah. So the thing for me is, when he's using a qualifier, something is simpler, or something is rarer, something like that.
Yeah.
He says more simple, more rare, more fast, stuff like that. Instead of using the proper term, they're all over in this, and it stands out to me a lot.
But now that you mentioned that, I'm probably going to notice it. The line I highlighted
was, Rayoden nodded and Kahar left. The man had come looking for a magical solution to his woes, but he had found an answer much more simple.
Oh, yeah, I know. Okay, I see exactly. Now that you mention it, now watch. I'm going to read it now, and every single one of those is going to stick out.
It's like, when people point it out, then you're going to notice it all the time.
And I just said,
Is that observation bias?
Is
that what that is?
What was that?
Was that observation bias? Is that what that is? When you notice something and suddenly you look out for it and you can see it way more.
Yeah.
47.
Yeah. And another thing, and this has remained throughout Brandon's books, and he has given more or less an explanation or an excuse for why it happens in anachronisms, words that feel out of place, modern words for us that creep into a text that is largely more
awesome.
Oh my gosh, Lift is the worst with it, but
Lift, But I noticed one in the Final Empire that really pissed me off. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
So the one that I had highlighted here, when they're talking about Casey, Kyan's daughter, who's a big, she's ravenous, wants to learn every language. And Luke,
she's the hungry one too, right?
Is talking about her and says it only takes Casey a few hours to devour a book, and her language learning ability is unreal. Unreal.
Yeah. Kind of reaching for the top shelf on that one there, aren't we?
Yeah. But so there are things like that pop up just on a line by line prose basis that in this book it's a little clunkier. Whereas
and it's to be expected.
Clearly progresses, moving through Mistborn and Warbreaker, and then especially into the Stormlight Archive and Reckoners. And I'm very excited to see how Skyward turns out. Because
I've read Skyward up to the currently released chapters, and I've got a few predictions about that I want to make with you just at a different time.
Because
you're right.
He keeps getting better as a writer, and that's really encouraging.
Oh yeah.
So
I mean, he still had a few moments in Elantris that were like, "Damn, that was a good line." He has that natural talent that shines through. That ability to deliver that one punch, that one line that hooks. Right? That's something I noticed right away about Brandon Sanderson. But like you were mentioning in Elantris, there are some certain flaws that he had as a writer back then, or at least certain areas that he has improved upon that you can now notice. It took him time to do.
I think his sense of humor is one that's gotten much better.
His sense of humor has gotten much better, with certain exceptions. There's certain characters, once again, that I hate. We mentioned another one just recently. God, I hate Lift. But
Lift's awful.
Where was I going?
Can we just say that?
God.
Let's just
we could say
you were mentioning certain things that come up in our language that just kind of seem out of place in an epic fantasy setting. One of those that I noticed was I accidentally said the Final Empire before, but what I meant to say was Hero of Ages. When when Vin is talking about what she's done with Ellen's family and stuff like that, and what Ellen says is he refers to it as a homicidal hat trick.
Oh yeah, hat trick. I remember that.
Hat trick. I was like, I remember seeing that, and as a Canadian, somebody who just absorbs hockey through osmosis in every direction.
Is there room in the Final Empire for Scott Rinks?
I picked up on that, and I went,
you gotta have sports. Come on.
That's
But
it's just you can tell that's a line. I think to me that I can just see Brandon writing that line and saying that sounded pretty good. I think I'll use that. That sounded good at least, right? Yeah, and it does sound kind of cool. It's funny. It's a funny line. But there are certain moments where you can really pick out the fact that at least during this point when he was writing this, he was a new writer, right? Again, the Sanderson avalanche, more pronounced in this book than in any of his other books, in my opinion.
Except for maybe Well of Ascension.
You're right. Well of Ascension was very, very slow until the end, wasn't it?
Wait, it's more pronounced in Elantris?
It's actually more...
up there, yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Once again, I forgot that he hasn't read the... Anyway.
No, that's a good thing.
It's more pronounced in Elantris. It gets... What you did mention earlier, Drew, that it does white knuckle quite a bit near the end. Like the last 100 pages in particular are very very fast paced.
Oh,
but
fantastic!
In its own way, I think it's more effective when you compare it to the rest of the book. Like the end of Elantris, when I read that, I was like, "Holy crap!" I think in a way it made it stick out quite a bit.
Absolutely,
more.
I think it's one of his strongest endings. But again, we'll get to that in the second episode.
Yeah, we're not going to discuss details on that though. No.
But no, on the aspect of his writing, there was one more thing
specifically.
There was one more thing that has stuck out to me, and I highlighted this line, where it's in Raoden's point of view, and it's after Seirini has started her widow's trial and is bringing food in.
Okay.
And this is in his point of view. It's not dialogue. It's narration. It says, "The princess is trying to stop hunger, but the people devour her food so fast that they end up feeling sick for a few hours, then starve for the rest of the day. And Elantrian's body doesn't work the same way as an ordinary person's." And I actually apologize. It is dialogue, not narration. I was...
That's all right. That's all right.
But he's talking to Galadon. This is something that Galadon already knows.
Mm-hmm.
It is a kind of an awkward way for him to, like, show instead of tell, but it still comes across as telling, because it's in conversation, but it's Raoden telling Galadon something Galadon already knows, just for the reader's benefit.
Yeah.
And there have been several things throughout this part that I've noticed like that.
Pretty clearly, like that. That's not really subtle. Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying. It's kind of a moment that, in a way, draws you back and goes, okay, so that's how Brandon decided to answer this particular question that he could see people having.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Am I understanding correctly? Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And, and I'm being really critical right now of his writing.
Of course.
This is still a well-written book. Like, I am obviously a huge Brandon Sanderson fan. He does a lot of things really, really well. I will be on record as saying, like, the characters in this book are some of my favorite in the entire Cosmere.
Really? I've got one in particular, but other than that...
Seirini and Rathan, especially when they're interacting with each other, are just delightful.
They have, like, golden chemistry, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
Any scene with those two together is just like, here we go.
Yeah.
Right? I love it. I love approaching those scenes when I know they're happening.
Yeah, that first scene on the wall when he's giving his little sermon and she does her stupid girl act and totally derails it.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
It's brilliant. I love that there's still these moments when I'm reading Elantris that I'm totally forgetting about, but I get to them and I'm like, ooh, that's right. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. So we
else we want to talk about?
Kind of closing in on the end of our time frame here. So are there any other things that you guys want to talk about?
There was one moment with Rathan that I want to talk about. I'm 99.99% sure this happens in the first half when he has a conversation, if you will, with Wyrn, and he decides to commit a little bit of, or a spot of blasphemy when he does so.
Via the Sion.
Yeah, the Sion.
The Sion, yeah. That stuck out against me, and I was like, oh yeah, this guy, Rathan, again, you just get another feel for, like, the whole dimension of his character. He's willing to do this because he's just that devoted. Again, I hesitate to use the word devoted in this particular case, but you could just feel how, I guess, desperate he is, and how, like, this is something that's hushed up. This is something that could really cause a storm if people were to, if the secret were to get out, right?
So I think it's something that's emblematic of his not instance, I don't know why I use that word. His particular case of lack of faith, but on the other hand, this iron grip on servitude, where using a Scion, he talks about like this is blasphemous, but Wern says it's okay. So
why is it okay?
And he justifies it by like the whole thing about how he learned other languages, even though it's sort of blasphemy to learn them because he needs to convert people, and he justifies it and says, oh, it's okay to blaspheme as long as it's for the greater good of Jaddeth.
It opens up the possibility of acceptable blasphemy.
It becomes destination before journey, if you will.
Yeah.
And so that's emblematic of him losing his faith, where he becomes goal oriented. And
he does,
and it's he talks about it in terms of like logic and rationality and stuff, but I don't even think it necessarily is logic. It's logical within the context of it, but it's what it really is an utter focus on servitude toward an end goal, and faith is morals are completely taken out. Faith is completely taken out. He is holding on to this one lifeline, and that's all that's left for him.
Yeah.
Especially as Deloff is not only undermining him, but showing him this is what faith looks like in this context, in the context of this religion. True.
Yeah.
So, he's very much an ends justify the means.
Like, could you imagine what Deloff would do if he walked in and saw him like pulling a Scion out of the box? Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like in present company, like Deloff is arguably the person who's closest to him at this point, and Deloff is at the same time the worst person for this to be revealed to.
Yes, exactly.
Isn't he? Like, is there anybody worse than Deloff? No, there isn't. But what else was I going to say? And on the same subject, the fact that he's committing blasphemy by using a Scion to contact Wyrn. There's another question that I just thought of right now, but I'm not going to ask it right now because this is something for a later time. We'll discuss in part 2. But is there anything else in particular that you wanted to discuss about the first half of Elantris?
Besides what I think is going to happen.
Oh, that's right. We want to get some predictions out of Jarrod. That's
more
true.
Before we do it. And
let's knock that out.
It's a Cosmere thing.
Yay!
It's like my other theory of like what we may have missed in this that has big Cosmere implications. It is in that same building with the mural leading up to the shard pool.
What are the odds
After the mural,
that building?
They enter a room that is filled with books. What do you think those books are about?
Wait a second. Oh, hold on.
Why
isn't the city supposed to be
specific
like committing suicide? How is that book
outside of the whole Aeon Door section on the path to the perpendicularity? I think that book, that little book collection there is a bunch of
very
Cosmere-aware realmatic knowledge.
Of course.
Well, we know that there are other civilizations that were very realmatically aware, don't we? Even at the present time of this narrative, which is at the beginning of the Cosmere.
Realmatically aware because the Airi are pre-Rio Elantrians. They are world hop.
Yeah.
Why don't they just run through the room and grab a book?
Yeah, and how long before the Final Empire does Elantris take place?
Long time before. Elantris is as of like currently.
I knew it was before
millennia.
Like about 1,000 years. There isn't
before the Final Empire.
What was that?
Before the Final Empire, 1,000 years before the Final Empire.
It's
so right around the time of Rashik's ascension, perhaps.
Maybe. I'd have to double check
because we know the ancient Terracemen. We do have words of Brandon that say the ancient Terracemen were also very realmatically aware, right? So it'd be really interesting if the ancient Terracemen and the Airi were very realmatically aware at roughly the same exact time period. Wouldn't that be interesting?
It would, absolutely.
I'd definitely want to follow up on that sometime.
Yeah. As far as published books go, White Sand is the earliest in the timeline, and then Elantris, and then there's a big jump, and then Mistborn Era 1. And then Warbreaker, and then Shadows for Silence and the Force of Hell, and then we have Stormlight.
I keep forgetting about that one.
Yeah,
Stormlight takes
front 5. Yeah, and then Mistborn Era 2
in between front 5 and back 5 is Era 2. Yeah. I wasn't aware it was that long before, like in between the Final Empire and Elantris.
I don't think there's
that's the second thing I've learned
number,
today.
But it is
right. This probably isn't. It's good to know though. for future theory crafting. So if that's everything we want to talk about right now, I want to get to Jared's predictions.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm ravenous for some of these because I like to make these about everything, and I definitely want to make these about future books at a later date.
Oh yeah.
So let's hear them, my man. Let's hear them.
Well, first of all, I think it's pretty damn obvious that Rathan isn't like dead or anything.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair enough.
Because Brandon very much hides the contents of what's actually in this quote poison.
Okay.
So
good.
it's clearly some sort of potion that's doing something, but I don't think it's like killing him.
What was the reason he drank it? Yep.
It wasn't like it wasn't a suicidal desperation. It was kind of like a sacrifice the queen in a chess game kind of desperation.
Interesting. Yeah. No.
I have no idea what
solid
that could
prediction.
possibly be though. As far as Raoden goes, like I almost feel like it's one of those things where he like one of the first things I thought when he was going around Elantris was like he just needs to find a way to like turn on the power. Like like find the circuit breaker, you know?
So what do you have any prediction about why the power got broken in the first place? Like why the Riode happened?
Well, I mean, okay, it's something.
It's very recent. Yeah,
it happened 10 years ago.
Been 10 years, right? It's not something that's happened lost in memory, right?
Right. So I mean, it's something to do with geography, but I don't really know what.
We know it like shook the land.
And and then another point that they make, like in Galadin's home base or whatever, all the books all have everything to do with geography. So I just don't know what though. Maybe something with the river that's running under the city.
There's a river under the city?
Yeah, they use it to
I totally
escape.
forgot that detail.
You know.
When they were that's how he went with Karata to the palace, right? I totally forgot that was a river. That's
I don't know, other predictions. I've always predicted that Rathan's going to kill Serene.
Now, how do you think that would happen, though? You think he would just snap and be like, that's it, this bitch dead? Or do you mean like...
Oh, it would very much be a cover-up.
Yeah, cover it up.
He's
a very subtle guy.
Have her killed.
Right.
It would be a little killing, not a Jamie killing.
Right.
You know about his guilty conscience, about his history with the Duladel Republic?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so, solid prediction. Any other thoughts you want to throw?
I think that's kind of it.
All right. Well, we're going to have so much to talk about in the
we definitely
and
will.
then when I can definitely just take the shackles off and just, all right, let's discuss this, Is there anything else you want to mention today?
So, do we want to go into the final draft?
Oh, yeah. Let's definitely take a whack at the final draft.
So,
That's something I want to get to.
What's the
final
protocol
draft
here?
Is,
I actually forgot about this.
As we're recording these episodes, each of us is imbibing a particular beverage. Whatever variety we want. And we're going to talk about, a little about what we're drinking. And I think it would be fun if we maybe wanted to decide to like tie it back to whatever book we're reading. Like, if there's something with the type of drink, like maybe there's like a really, really like punchy scene and you're like, you know what, I'm going to like have a scotch because I need something hard for this.
I love my scotch.
I mean, not that I have anything off the top of my head for this. I think this should be totally optional. But so we're going to talk a little bit about what we're drinking. So let's start off with Jarrod here.
Sure. I have a Jolly Russian. That kind of fits with the times, right?
Sure, there are lots of pirates in this in part one.
It's Odell.
Drio Crushthroat?
Russian Imperial Stout. Aged in rum barrels.
Здравствуйте.
It's very good.
Is it?
Coffee and cocoa.
I didn't know Russians made good
spiced molasses and dried
beer.
fruit, and a little bit of vanilla, which I don't taste.
I realize that sounds ignorant when you say that. Russians make good beer, eh?
Yeah.
Apparently.
Russian imp stouts are.
Because when I think of Russian, I think of vodka, obviously.
For sure.
Vodka.
I definitely don't think rum.
Back to Call of Duty days.
I'm very partial to stouts, so don't be surprised if on
I like a stout on occasion.
Episodes I usually have a stout.
Yeah. So Rob, what do you have?
I'm drinking, like I said, I was drinking a straight up Molson Canadian. I buy them in the tall boys. I got an easy, not too difficult to please palate as far as beer goes. But I mean, I've had, like, for example, Molson has this microbrew out now called Molson M, I believe it's called. Oh my God, it's so good. It's like, it goes down like water. It goes down so
That's
well.
dangerous.
But
Yeah.
like speaking again, I realize this is coming from a Canadian, right?
Yeah.
But you can't go wrong with Molson Canadian. It's just boom, it's perfect. You can go buy it. It's not like just go to the beer store. You have beer store down there in Colorado, or is it just like a liquor store that you go to?
Oh yeah.
Hold on, no, I don't mean a beer store. I mean the beer store.
What?
It's
Oh,
a chain. Oh, okay, that's what I was asking, because we have one that's just called the beer store.
Gotcha.
You find it all over Canada.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that's exactly what I'm drinking for now. You just can't go wrong with a straight up Molson Canadian. Of course, I like to keep it out for like a half hour before I drink it. I don't know if that's sin to beer drinkers, but I can't drink it too cold.
No, that's fair.
I can't
Some
I
beers
can't do
are.
that. It hurts my teeth. It bites too hard. I like to be able to gulp a beer. I don't sip beer ever. I don't know if that's a thing. I'll sip a scotch.
I'll change that when
definitely.
you
I'll
come
skip it.
when you come down to Fort Collins and
Oh
visit
yeah,
us.
I'll sip a nice fucking Glenfiddich 12. That's my favorite scotch. Just drink it neat, splash of water. That's I'm gonna go buy one of these after this. It's my birthday today, so I'm gonna go buy
Yeah, that's right.
one of those.
I meant to say this off the top, but I forgot. Happy birthday, Rob.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And oh, hey, look at that. It's 4:20 p.m. right now. Ha ha. Nice coincidence there.
But yeah, so
Yeah, I'm gonna go buy scotch after this.
so
just got
I
the taste for it.
can't blame you at all for drinking a Molson Canadian. The inner hockey player in me
Yeah,
says that that's a classic beer. You know.
yeah,
It's
that's good. Made with
well,
Canadian
meanwhile,
water.
Jared's over here almost like falling over backwards on his chair. Apparently, that
What,
Jolly
you had
Russian.
how many Jolly Russians?
Hey, man, it's
Just
13.
one,
Did you
but it was
pregame a little before we
13%.
started?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
The ABV is a
Canadians
bit
are 5%.
unexpected.
Yeah, they're
rum-
5%.
the
I've
rum
had
barrel.
1.5 tall boys.
But yeah, so what I was drinking was a La Folie from New Belgium Brewing, which is a kind of
Is that a local brewery, New Belgium Brewery?
yes. So it's Fort Collins, Colorado. They are one of the biggest microbreweries in America.
This is something that I really had, by the way, as an aside, I'm really jealous of Drew about, because you have, what, 17 breweries in your hometown?
I think we're up to 26.
Something like that?
I've
Holy
lost
crap.
count.
That's amazing.
Yeah, no,
like,
they're
I'm going to come
more-
visit sometime, clearly, and we are going to make a day or two or five
Oh, yes.
of it, right?
Oh no,
Definitely.
I think Fort Collins was just overtaken. Actually, I don't remember where it was, but we're now second in the United States in breweries per capita.
Damn.
So yeah, there's a
Damn.
lot of really good craft beer here. Anyway, so La Folie, it's a sour brown ale from New Belgium, oak aged. This beer though is specifically like kind of a big deal in just kind of craft beer history, because it was the first commercially widely distributed sour ale in the United States.
What does that mean, a sour ale? Where does that rank on like the ale to like light beers? Like there's a spectrum, right? It starts, stouts at the or near the very bottom, right? It's a very dark roast kind of beer.
So-
Like, isn't there a spectrum? Because I'm showing my ignorance on beer at this point, but
The spectrum, like in that
Lay it on
sense,
me.
is a little reductive. It's more just like the flavor profile. Like it is sour.
Okay.
It's not like a super heavy body like a stout.
Right.
But it's dark in color. It's a brown ale. But it's super tart. You're gonna get a lot of like cherry flavor, a lot of the oakiness from the barrel in there. It's delicious. But this beer more or less is the reason why we have sour beers in North America now. Why they're such a big deal.
I wonder where that is sold, and if that's something I could buy in Canada, or is that sold specifically locally? Do you know?
No, it's sold all over the U.S. I know. I don't know if it's in Canada. It wouldn't surprise me though. I know New Belgium distributes internationally because they have like
Belgium. I'm
Fat
gonna write that
Tire
down.
and Easy Street in Ireland the last time I was out there. So
I am opening the note on my phone. I'm gonna write that down. New Belgium. What was the name of that beer?
here, look at the camera.
La Folie. Perfect. French. I like it. They speak a lot of French in Belgium. At least I think.
Yes, they do.
I don't want to. Oh, okay. I had me worried for a second there. Okay, that's the word I was coming across as incredibly ignorant. Yeah. All right. So, is there anything else you want to discuss, or should we pop this baby off? Like we're at. I think we're at. Let's see here. I'm at 109. An hour and 9 minutes. Is this like a rough the structure? That's something we're going to continue going forward.
Yeah, I
from
think
this first
an
episode?
hour is probably pretty good.
An hour sounds pretty good.
So yeah, we'll probably stick to around that. Some books may go longer. You know, when we're doing like Words of Radiance and Oathbringer and maybe some Wheel of Time
I think we'll
books.
just be splitting those into more multiple.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we'll do
parts, right?
More than 2 episodes for a 460,000 word book.
Yeah, because Elantris
we're finishing one will probably.
How many is Elantris? Elantris is like 250,000,
I think it's just a little over 200. Like that. I'd have to double check.
And we're doing 2 parts for that. I'm assuming later when we get to it, Wheel of Time books will be 2-3 parts a piece. Yeah. Stormlight might be even like 4 or 5 if you want to go part by part, which is something with that we might want to consider.
Yeah, we could.
I demand that I'm on the Wheel of Time ones.
Yeah, you will.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely want to get Jarrod back.
We have some big plans for the Wheel of Time. We're not going to go into that now.
Let's not reveal it, but we have something pretty special that we have in mind that we want to try.
But yeah, I think that's a wrap for our first episode. So
all right,
the next time we'll be covering parts 2 and 3 of Elantris and closing that book out, and Jarrod will be back for that. So thanks everybody for listening.
Absolutely. All right.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Peace.